Hello, and welcome to Season 9, Episode 5 of the Cartridge Club's Game of the Month podcast, where we bring together members of the Cartridge Club community to discuss our community playthrough. If you're new to the club or are interested in participating in future months for games like Portal 2 and our Portable Power Month, please join our community Discord, our forums at cartridgeclub.org, or follow us on Twitter at cartridgeclubNA. We'd love to see the hashtag Cartridge Club used whenever you talk about one of the games we've selected. I'm Melissa, Mrs. QDawg, and I'm here with my husband, Eric, the mighty QDawg.
Hello.
And on behalf of our rotating pool of hosts, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Additionally, on behalf of the entire Cartridge Club community, I would like to give a huge shout out to all of our Patreon Club backers. Joel Boyce, Kevin from Buried on Mars, Bass Guy, Dean from Round 2 Gaming, and Caleb J. Ross. We can't thank you enough.
And I should mention, Kevin from Buried on Mars is now Kevin from Canadian Grooves.
Oh, that's true.
Okay,
yes.
I have to update that.
Kevin from Canadian Grooves.
Okay.
It is January, and once again, we're playing a classic game from the days of the Sega Genesis, Revenge of Shinobi. And joining me to talk about this game are two newcomers to the podcast. We want to welcome COE33.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
And we want to welcome Mr. Mullet Gaming.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, this is going to be great. All right, so we are playing Revenge of Shinobi.
Yes.
It is January, and we have been playing Sega games for the last couple years.
That's right.
And we have been hosting because someone here is a big Sega fan.
I'm a big Sega fan, and I'm super glad to have a game like Revenge of Shinobi.
Yes.
So it's a great game for January.
This has been on your backlog for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so we said, let's play Revenge of Shinobi. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what your experience with this game is.
You're going to start with me.
I am going to start with you.
Okay, so
you picked it.
My experience with this game, I'm the one who, you can blame me. I recommended this game for January. I thought it was time that we represented a Sega game, or a Shinobi game. I knew about this game back from 1989. And I remember seeing GamePro magazine ads in GamePro magazine for the Sega Genesis, The Revenge of Shinobi. And I had played Shinobi on the Master System, and we'd seen it in the arcade. And when I saw the graphics or the screenshots for Revenge of Shinobi for the Genesis, I was like blown away. I thought this game looks fantastic, and I definitely would have wanted. I definitely wanted that game. I didn't have a Genesis, and it turns out I wasn't going to get a Genesis until 1996.
Oh my goodness!
So like 6-7 years later. And when we did finally get a Genesis, it came with the 6-pack, and Revenge of Shinobi was on it, and I was really thrilled. Right up until the time I started playing it, and I thought, oh my gosh, this game is way too hard for me. I'll never get through it. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. So after, 30-some years, I've finally gotten a chance to play through Revenge of Shinobi. And I'm really happy to have that opportunity after all that time to play a game that I had drooled over coveted for many, many years.
We did a little poll, okay?
Okay.
So let's just talk about what others have done, and then I want to hear what COE and Mr. Mullet Gaming also. So we know why you picked this game. The Cartridge Club did a poll and asked, how much experience do you have playing Revenge of Shinobi? And we had 44% said none, Chucks.
None.
There was like a little
There's
joke
too many
there.
Nintendo people in the Cartridge Club.
There 36% said I died a bunch, and that's it. Which I would think that's what you would.
That was my experience up until this month. Yeah. Well,
Then there's I beat Spider-Man, and that was 8%, and 12% were an Aboro Ninja Master.
Wow.
Yeah. Now,
all right.
Let's see. So COE33, did you which category would you be put in with this game?
Well, this is one of my all-time favorites. I've been playing this for over 30 years. Yeah. So I don't know if I would say I'm a ninja master, but I can beat the game, and I can get the good ending, and I know all the secrets. So, I know the game pretty well.
Very nice.
Excellent. Excellent.
And I was really happy that Eric picked this. What a great game for January. And I'm kind of shocked that only 43% of the Cartridge Club, what they said that they haven't played it.
Yeah, they have not played it.
That's amazing. Such an iconic game. Mm-hmm. And definitely one of my all-time favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
All right. And Mr. Mullet, what about you? What's your experience with this game?
I am on the opposite end of the spectrum. I had never heard of this game prior to the announcement on the Cartridge Club. And actually, when it came out in 1989, I don't want to date myself, but I was 4 years old. So, yeah.
I'm glad you didn't say you weren't born yet. Okay, I'm just happy you were
exactly
alive, because then I would be dating myself. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So, it's our friend Dean got me involved in the Cartridge Club, and this was actually the very first game that was announced. And I thought, hey, I have it, and let's just play it. Let's just see what it's all about. And I was at 44%, I believe. So I'm one of those hardcore Nintendo fans. And I think that's one of the great things about the Cartridge Club, though, is that it gets you out of those specific games that you've been playing.
That's right.
So it's great too, and especially with this upcoming month, Portal 2, I've gotten in more into the PC world, so this is great. So yeah, very little experience with this.
Oh,
excellent.
Great.
So I want to ask, so COE 33, you said that you had been playing this for 30 years. So
right.
What the first time you played it, how did that come to be?
So this was the third game I ever played on Sega Genesis. Initially, I played Sonic the Hedgehog. Then I got Altered Beast. And I picked up Revenge of Shinobi. I believe it was at Toys R Us. And it's because I saw, like you, Eric, I saw the magazines and saw the screenshots and was kind of blown away. So this is actually probably the first Ninja game I ever played, because I don't remember playing a Ninja game on the NES before this. And I got it, and it is brutally hard. And especially, back in the day, you don't have really any way to look up walkthroughs or anything like that. So it's trial and error. And I remember being really frustrated, but being very kind of into it enough to where I played it a lot. I'd come home from school and practice, and get to a place where I could finally beat the game. But I know it took me a long time.
But would you say, so we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I want to delve into just a little bit right now, and that's the version. So you played it in like early 89 or 1989, maybe 1990. So you held it up for a moment. You showed sort of what looks like the original cartridge.
This is the one I have now, is the second version that added the title screen before the splash page that says Yuzo Koshiro on it. Okay. So it's the revision 1.02, I guess I call it.
Okay.
The one I played back in 1989 was a revision 1.
Okay.
And
we're going to talk about the version.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, but it had, all the stuff you would expect from that first revision.
And so did you play that cartridge this time?
This time I played this cartridge, and then I streamed it on Steam, the Steam Classics Collection version.
Steam Collection. And those are different, right?
They are different.
Some differences.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We'll talk about that. Okay, Mr. Mullet, what did you play this time?
Yeah, I think I got the most legally safe version, and I think we're going to talk about that later, version of this game. And I had it on the Sega Genesis collection for Switch. I know it was released on different platforms, but there's about 50 or so odd games on there, and there's a lot of great games, but that one was one of them, and that's the one I played it on. So.
All right, so there is a story behind the game, and since this is the second in the Shinobi games, it's taking place 3 years after the first game, and the criminal organization Zed from the original game has since reformed and have renamed themselves Neo-Zed. Ooh, that sounds much more scary. They decide to have their revenge on the Oboro ninja clan and Joe Musashi by killing his master and kidnapping Joe's bride. Naoko?
Sure.
Is that how you'd say it?
Sure.
Joe, having reached the clan too late, manages to learn about Neo-Zed's plot by his dying master. Joe decides to travel the world to gain his revenge on Neo-Zed, as well as to try to save Naoko before it is too late.
Wow.
And that, that comes, we can talk about the ending later, but that's a critical part of the game. There's 2 endings involving his bride. So this game was originally released on December 2nd, 1989. And we did talk about how this game is very difficult, would you say?
Yeah.
Maybe, huh?
Well, I want to ask these guys. I mean, so we talked about, she mentioned the story, right?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think of the story? Did it play any part? Was it at all relevant to the game at all? Or what'd you think?
Yeah, for me now, I mean, I'm just I love platformers, and I think this was a great experience with platforming, and I think it has a stereotypical going after the girl, the damsel in distress story, and
Sure.
that's really all you need to know, I think.
It was 1989.
Yeah.
They weren't real sophisticated.
No.
COE,
Yeah.
what about you?
Oh, well, I like these old games. The story is simple, it's there, but it's not getting in the way of the actual gameplay. And that's what this game really excels at, is quality gameplay. Hard, but it's not cheap.
All right. Well, let's talk about the gameplay.
Let's talk about some of the controls and maybe the double jump.
I want to talk about the controls. Actually, I want to hear from our guest here.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Mullet. Tell me about the control. Now you played on the Switch version, right? So this was originally a cartridge game hooked up to CRT, really precise controlling. How did you find the new release version to work in the controls?
So unfortunately, I don't have the time, the money, the resources, the space, or even the spousal support to get retro games and retro consoles. And the last one, the spousal support, that's an important one right there. But
yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah. So what I did is I tried to get it as exact. I know it's emulated. But I did purchase the 8-bit Do Sega Genesis controller replica.
Okay.
And it was a $30 controller, so it was pretty good on that part. So I was able to get that, and I think it's definitely a lot better than the stick, and especially with these older games, you have to at least stay with the D-pad. I found the controls not bad with the controller that I was using, but again, when we look at the double jump, it was very touchy with what I was using.
Okay. Okay. I mean, the game is predominantly. You mentioned platforming. It's predominantly a jumping, navigating an environment, and shooting, right? And so we're going to talk about the double jump, believe me. But COE, what about you? How did you find the controls for a game like this that's just so arcade-like?
Well, yeah, and I think controls are like the most important thing about a platformer like this. And I'm a total stickler for like CRT televisions, original hardware. So I'm used to playing it that way, original controller, original console, CRT. But when I went to play this month, I was actually going to stream it, and my capture software kind of decided to go kaput that day. So I ended up playing the Steam version, and I noticed a massive difference in the controls, especially with the double jump. Trying to execute that double jump with the Classics collection on Steam and a Xbox controller was significantly more difficult than it is for me with a just standard original Genesis controller on a CRT. So I think if you really want the best experience possible, it's playing that original cart on a CRT, because that double jump, there's not much lenience there for like getting it just right, and it can be a real hassle. But I didn't have that problem when I was playing with original hardware. So,
I was curious about that. We're going to talk about the double jump, because I had heard that the number of frames where it will accept the double jump is really quite tight, and that's why I asked Mr. Mullet about playing it on a new system, because I like to blame. I'm a poor craftsman. I like to blame my tools and not my skills. And so I was playing it. I had played it on the Classics, the collection on the Xbox, because it had saves. And I was wondering, and I'm playing it on a modern TV, and I'm wondering, how much lag, or how much lag is accounting for my frequent misses of these double jumps. Well, it turns out it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because I'm just too old to have the reaction time. But I tried playing it on several different things. I had played it on my Genesis. I played it through a FrameMeister because I have RGB and it gets really good quality. I was struggling with the double jump. I tried playing it through Composite, not on a CRT though. Still struggled. I played it on the Xbox, still struggled. Ultimately, I concluded I'm just going to struggle with this. I think the double jump is really difficult, but it's interesting to hear your comment. I almost pulled out a CRT just to see if I could get any better at the game.
I think the CRT might be the key because that one level, the seaport, which is kind of notoriously difficult for jumping. I struggled big time playing that without, with playing it on Steam. I died constantly on that level, and I think it's because of the input lag. I really do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mullet, what do you think? What do you think? You're going to go back and try it on an official system or CRT, or you're stuck with Switch?
Yeah, I'm stuck with Switch. But I think overall, it just seemed to me like like you said, the input lag. It was just inconsistent. I think I put in about 15 to 20 hours, and towards the end of playing the game, I was starting to get it. I don't know if it was just because I had this muscle memory adapted to that specific lag that was happening. I'm not too sure. But we'll see. If I ever have an opportunity to play it on an original system, I would take up on that, but I doubt I would make it as far or even beat the game like I did.
I know. I mean, I played the first few levels only this month, and I was playing it on the Xbox as well because it had the saves, and that double jump, I was like, when you were sitting there, I'm like, do you hear me pushing this button? Like,
it just doesn't. It doesn't.
It was not responding. So.
So you mentioned COE. You mentioned the seaport area, and I'm going to use that to segue into another aspect of the game. I had so much trouble with that I had to. The only way I could get past it was to use magic.
Yeah.
I had to save there is ninja magic in the game, and I had to save my ninja magic for a couple of parts of the game just so I could make it through some areas where a very precise double jump was required, and I wasn't going to make it otherwise. And so you guys want to talk a little bit about the magic?
Yeah.
Did you guys ever use the magic to help you get through the game? There's another magic that we should talk about too, but tell us about your experience with the magic. COE, why don't you tell us?
Sure. Well, I know the spot you're talking about, and I'm pretty sure that you have to use the magic of Fushin to get past that jump. I could be wrong.
If you miss it, you die, right?
Yes. And I'm pretty sure that
this.
they designed it that way where you did have to use your magic for that. Now, maybe it's possible it's like a pixel perfect jump, because I know there's a couple of those that you can get. There's like one in Chinatown that you can make without the magic of Fushin. But I'm pretty sure in the seaport, there's one jump that requires that magic. Because I've never made it without it.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Mullet?
Yeah. Same here with when we're at the seaport. The jumping magic. I couldn't. I tried and I couldn't without it. But I think the best magic, in my opinion, is the shield or the lightning, especially for bosses. It's just a really good lifesaver in that aspect.
Yeah.
I was going to say with the lightning, you have that bounce back.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Right, and so with the lightning, you can avoid the bounce back and get through.
That was So you mentioned the bosses, I used the lightning magic quite a bit. And one of the primary reasons I used it was because it would stop bounce back. Which is a huge part of the game, right? So did you ever use it for that, or there's another reason I would use it too. What would you primarily use it for, Mr. Mullet? Just to get extra free eight hits, or what?
Basically for everything. I think with this game, you got to take what you can get, just because it is just so unforgiving in nature. But there was one part, I think level 1 of the last world, when you had there was an enemy at a jump, and they'd always get me, and I did have to use the lightning, so I didn't get that bounce back.
Yes.
I think it was one of those guys with the chains.
Yeah.
I would just always get that bounce back, or a guy with a gun would get me, and the bullet would bounce me back, and it's just like you made it that far, and you got past these enemies, but all of a sudden you found one projectile that just bounced you back. It's just like, might as well use it, when you have it. And then also, there are some parts where I did use the self detonator just to get through some areas with the enemies. That was cool. Just when there's just a ton of enemies on screen.
Yeah, what happens there is you use the magic, and it does a lot of damage to the enemies on screen, but it takes away your life. But you come back in the same spot with full health.
With full health.
And I think your magic is replenished again.
Yep.
And we can talk about end of game strategies a little bit later, but that was so there were 4 types of magic: the lightning, the jumping, the self-destruct, and a 4th. No one's brought up the 4th one yet. COE, what kind of magic did you use?
I use all of them in different spots. So Ikazuchi, that's the shield magic. I use that for the military base because there's so many people shooting at you in that level that I like to just throw on that shield and like truck it through that level.
Oh, sure.
So that's where I use that. The fusion magic is great for the skyscraper level because you can literally just jump up to the top of the skyscraper and clear that level real quick. The Maijin, that's the one where you self-detonate. That's really useful for certain bosses because you detonate and then you have another magic and you could throw on a shield or something like that right after you detonate. So I like to use that. And what's the other one? The Kairu, I think it's called. It's the where he shoots the fire from his sword. That's probably the one I use the least amount. And actually, I don't know. Do I use that? I don't think I use that generally.
I never used it. What about you, Mr. Mullet? Did you ever use the fire one? It shoots columns of flame or something and does a lot of damage.
Yeah. So, just for context, and I think a few of us are on the same page with it, but I think as modern gamers that we have the luxury of having these emulators that we can practice different sections of it. And what I did is I practiced the game, and then once I felt like I got good enough at it, then I would stream it and I would try to go the whole way through without using save states or rewind or anything like that. But one of my strategies for the beginning of the game is I was using the fire for the first boss just because I didn't know like how everything worked, and it seemed like a strategy that was working. But once I got better at doing the double jump and throwing the stars, the shurikens, shurikens. I can never say that word. I was able to get a better strategy where I didn't have to use it. I felt like I used the fire the least amount, just because for some of the bosses it didn't really do much, of damage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about can we talk about the shurikens?
Yeah. Let's talk about the
shurikens.
So,
how'd you guys? So, I don't know how I want to ask this. The game starts you typically with 50.
Yeah.
Throwing the shuriken, right?
And you pick up more up along the way.
And you can pick up more along the way. Yep. But there are options. There's an option menu that allows you to change the number. COE, you said before you know all the secrets. Do you know what I'm getting to?
I do.
What's
I
the
do.
secret?
Yes. So you go to shurikens and you put it on. You let it sit there for like 10 seconds on. I think it's on 0 shurikens. Yeah. So if you click on 0 shurikens, let it sit there for about 5 to 10 seconds or something like that. It clicks over and gives you infinite shurikens, which makes the game considerably easier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It shows up as a 00, and after a few seconds, it looks like an infinity.
Infinite, yeah.
Mr. Mullet, did you know about that? Did you try that?
This is the first time I've heard of it.
Oh,
okay. Well, I'm glad that we could tell you. Yeah. I probably read about that in GamePro back in the day, but I did know about that trick, the infinite shuriken.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at.
And yet this game is still hard, even with the infinite shuriken.
So you must have played through Mr. Mullet with the 50 shuriken, or did you adjust it?
Whatever the most they gave me, yeah.
Okay. What about you, COE?
I played it on like every different setting during January because I was trying to see if I still had my chops because it had been a little while since I played it. So I played it and beat it with the infinite shurikens, and then I tried to wean myself down and do more difficulty, harder settings and stuff like that. Yeah, I have a hard time. Yeah, I played on the hardest setting with 30 shurikens, I think it was, but I did not beat it. That was like my cutoff for how, if I could beat the game. I think the best I did was normal and 50 shurikens. I believe was the best I did.
Well, what do the difficulty levels do? I didn't even try any others.
Just extra lives, basically.
Oh, number of lives. Okay.
All right.
It doesn't change like enemy health or anything like that.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So there is one other thing I want to mention about weapons and magic, and that is you could get a power-up. right? And I think I estimated it makes you roughly maybe 3 times stronger. Did you guys, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that I liked to do is use the lightning magic as soon as I got a power up, because you lose the power up as soon as you get hit, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get bounced and you might not lose it, but more times than not, I get the power up and a stray bullet, a stray whatever hits me and I lose the power up. So when I get that power up, in order to keep it as long as possible, I would use the lightning magic, and then I could get like basically 8 free hits and still have the power up. Did you guys ever do anything like that?
I didn't, but I think that's really smart, because the power up for the shurikens is one of the most powerful, I think, power ups in the game. I mean, it's almost essential for certain bosses.
Yeah.
Especially the last boss.
So that was between the bounce back,
that's a pretty good strategy.
The protection of the power up, and the I guess the 8 free hits or whatever it was. I'm saying 8. I don't know what the actual number is. The lightning magic was really, really my favorite by far for those 3 reasons. All right.
Let's see. I guess we could talk about maybe.
I want to do the.
Yeah, you want to talk about the stages, the different stages? Yeah. All right.
Because we've kind of delved.
Yeah, we talked about we talked about the military stage and the water stage. Like, so we can go back and talk. Yeah. About
I want. Let's just go through
favorites or what
Well, I'm going to ask. Mr. Mullet, tell us about stage 1. Do you remember stage 1?
Yeah. So it was like kind of the houses, or the going into like Japan type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was great. I mean, I think one thing about this game, especially from when it was released and the hardware that it was used on, is beautiful. It's a beautiful game. The sprite animation, especially for the time, is absolutely amazing. And I was actually blown away by the graphics and how well put together the game is. So yeah, I think a lot of it added a lot of depth and charm to some of these platformers. And I just got done playing not too long ago Mega Man 3. For the NES. I know it's different hardware, but still it's just bland as compared to the Revenge of Shinobi. Great colors, great sprites, great animation. So yeah, I think it was a really beautiful stage, and all of them were.
Good intro stage. We'll talk about we can mix bosses and stages together here.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, even when I started getting better at the game, the stage 1 boss, I could never get. So he's like a big a samurai, and he kind of swings a sword overhead at you. I could not reliably beat that guy. I would have to use the magic every time. I found it to be a strangely difficult boss for the very first stage.
I'm glad to hear that, because I actually struggle with that first boss more than a lot of the later bosses as well. And I understand like the timing that you're supposed to go for with him, but he hits me with that sword almost every time. So I find myself going up onto the platform, double jumping with shurikens if they're powered up, and taking them out in 3 or 4 hits that way. Yeah, but he's kind of a nightmare.
He's tough.
Yeah. That's the same thing I did too with that.
The double jump?
Double jump, yeah.
Sure. But we didn't talk about that. What happens when you double jump and you fire your shuriken? What happens?
Oh, yeah.
Shuriken spread.
Yeah.
Shuriken spread. It uses like 8 or something, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big. We should have talked about that.
That's a good strategy. If you can jump, if you can make the double jump.
If you can make the double jump,
and you hit your weapon button correctly.
Yeah, you have to do the double jump, and it sprays all these shuriken down in an arc. And that's a good way to beat the first boss, especially if you're powered up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why that unlimited shurikens is so nice. You can just go around shuriken spread and
because we said how many did you use? Like 8 or something?
I thought it was like 8 at a time, or maybe it's 10. It'll wipe out your inventory pretty quickly. So stage 1, that was set in Japan. That was a pretty interesting thing. I think it kind of teaches you about the game. Is this stage 2? I think it's stage 2. COE, do you know what's the deal? Stage 2 starts you off pretty nasty, if you ask me. The waterfall, right?
Yeah, stage 2 is when you realize that this game is not going to be easy. And you're going to have to be really good with those double jumps because you're at that waterfall and you have these logs that come down off the waterfall. And you have to do these really well-timed jumps while avoiding flying ninjas and trying to avoid the explosive crates to not get knocked back into the waterfall. And I think the difficulty ramps up quite a bit on that second level.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Mulch? You remember that?
Oh my gosh, the crates, those were just get me every time. It seems like because I would forget about it, and the guy would hit me, or I would accidentally hit it. With some of the inputs that I was putting in, and it would just bounce me back. The platforming. So I really love platforming games, and I think the logs. I like that type of stuff. I think it flowed really well, but it was difficult because you had to have good timing with it. But I like that part. I thought it was really great platforming. But for a second stage, that was rough. That was rough.
Yeah, I think back in '96 or '97 when I was playing it, that's about as far as I got. That stage the end of that stage, there's sort of like 3 off-screen logs, and you have to hop across 3 of them and then make it up to a high jump, and you just got to make your way across. And I'm like, this is too much. You mentioned the crates, though. We should probably point out what you mean. There are crates throughout the game. Sometimes they have the power-ups that we mentioned, but sometimes what's inside the crates?
Bombs.
Explosives.
Bombs, right? And there's a little thing on there that counts down, but if you happen to walk over the bomb, it explodes immediately, right? And then there's the bounce back.
Yes.
So,
which in that second level is particularly dangerous.
Yes, that's right. So they pulled the thing where the crates can be beneficial, but every now and then there's an explosive in it, and it'll do some real damage or knock you back.
And it would never do damage to the enemies. I was like, like when I was playing, I was like, oh, maybe this will get at least the enemies. Like like in Streets of Rage when you sometimes have.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know.
Like they'll hurt the enemies, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But they won't. If you're away from it, you're okay.
But sure. Yeah, I know.
But these bombs don't hurt the enemies too.
Yeah, you pretty much just have to memorize where they're at and avoid them.
And they can be memorized. Memorized. It's always the same. Yeah. So I got to the point when I had played the game so many times that I just knew I wasn't even going to open the box. I'm just going to hop over it or walk around it. So okay, so. I do want to, I don't know if we'll go through every level, but there's a few that I want to hit, and then I'll ask you guys about your favorites. Level 3, the airplane. How'd you guys feel about that one? What's the COE, what's the deal with that airplane level?
Well, you're going along, and then all of a sudden you get sucked out of the airplane because the door opens on you. So, as long as you jump over those doors and try not to get knocked back into the doors, you're okay. This is another level where I like to use the shield magic because I can kind of fly through because there's some spots where the ninjas are throwing bombs at you, and those bombs, they'll explode. They'll knock you right back into a door, and you'll fly out the airplane. So that shield, that's another level where that shield is really handy.
Yeah, and I did the same thing. That same exact strategy with that lightning shield.
Just to stop the bounce back, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I'm trying to think of what's in. Is there anything notable in level 4?
I don't even remember.
Right? Which one's that?
Factory.
The factory.
There is. That's probably one of the most notable things. So
all right,
there is a 2-up life right at the beginning of 4-1. Yes. So if you can make it to 4-1, and right at that beginning you can spam over and over again. You can do a shuriken spread, jump, get the 2-1 and die because you will die going for it, but you're getting an extra life. So you can sit there for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, get as many extra lives as you need to get through the game, which you're probably going to need because it's really hard, especially when you get to that seaport and try to defeat Zed. It's almost essential unless you're like a true ninja master. I think getting those extra lives is really handy.
Did you know about that, Mr. Mullet? Nope.
Yeah, I was just trying to get through the game, but that was good to know. I try not to look up anything, but that's good stuff right there.
Yeah, that's a key tactic.
Yes,
That's right. So yeah, the thing is that it's a 2-up, but you will die getting it. At least I could never get it without dying. So it's a net 1 life. You get 2, you lose 1. You get 2, you lose 1. But now, I my brothers and I always had sort of rules for when we would beat a game, and that using that technique would count as a legitimate technique because it's in the game. And so I will admit I took advantage of that. But now, COE, you said something at the beginning, and I hope I don't embarrass you too much. You said you knew all the secrets.
I believe so.
But there is a 2-up in the airplane level. Did you know about that one?
But isn't it like 2-up in the airplane level? No, maybe I don't know about that.
There's one of the very first. It's one of the taller elevators that goes from it's one of the elevators, and I would actually farm some of the lives in that area. You don't have to die.
Okay.
It's not. You don't have to die to get it. You got to hit a wall. It's just in a wall when you're riding the elevator. If you hit it at a certain spot, and then I would just take the elevator, and then there was a door nearby, and I'd just jump out the door.
And then just go back to the level. How far into the level is it?
About a third or a little, about a third of the way in. But that was one that I used too. And then I found the one in the 4th level that you're talking about. So I might have used them both a little bit.
Hey, whatever works, right? I'm with you as far as it's not cheating if it's in the game.
It's in the game?
Yeah.
It's part of the design of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So
I'm about to try that.
All right, that's level 4. That was the factory level, right? That one, that one was pretty good. What's next?
The skyscraper, level 5.
Level 5 was the skyscraper. COE, you mentioned that before. That's a vertical level, right?
Yeah, and probably the easiest level in the game if you use your Fujin magic, because you can literally just go to the far right corner and just jump all the way up to the top.
Is that right?
Yep.
There's lasers in that level. They kept getting me.
Yeah. You just got to jump as quick as possible.
Is that what you did? Did you just get through that? Just get out of there?
Yeah, I just get out of there. Yeah.
What was the other half of level 4? There's usually 2 stages.
5, you mean?
The cars, the street, the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And then 6
What
is
about
Chinatown and the train.
Chinatown and the train. Okay, so you mentioned Chinatown with the jump. There's a particularly nasty jump right at the end, right?
Yep.
Anything else? I love the music in Chinatown.
Oh, I did
That's
too.
my favorite music stage.
It's some of the best music, yeah.
That's what I was going to mention, the Chinatown music. I actually used it as an intro to one of my streams.
Oh, very
nice.
good. Yeah.
So yeah, and actually the whole music, I really enjoyed the music in this game.
Sure.
I listen to it even when I'm working, on YouTube it loops. So it's great music to concentrate to, and just to have a nice little jingle throughout the day.
Sure. So it's what is it? Yuzo Koshiro?
Yep. Yuzo Koshiro.
So you want to tell us what do you know about Yuzo Koshiro? COE?
Favorite 16-bit retro era composer. I have a bunch of his music on vinyl. I listen to it all the time. This is one of my favorite soundtracks of his. This and probably Streets of Rage 2 are real high on the list.
Yes.
Especially that intro when you first fire up the game, that little interlude just right at the beginning, this kind of sets the tone and then goes into that iconic music right off the first stage.
Sure.
And just pretty much throughout the game, I think it's top notch.
Did you find that that it set a standard for you that you were disappointed in later, or?
Yeah, I think it's probably my best experience with sound in a video game up to that point when I played this. I mean, as I said, it's the 3rd Genesis game I ever played. So my history was NES, then Genesis. Okay. So, big leap there. And now I will say the first Sonic game, that is the first game I played, that has really good sound as well.
Oh, that does too. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So the bar was right off the bat with the Genesis. The bar for sound was really high. But then I started playing these Yuzo Koshiro games. Now I wasn't familiar with I knew of the name because you see it on the splash page, Yuzo Koshiro. But I don't think I was as aware of him back then as I am now.
Sure.
But I knew that I loved the music in this, and I loved the music in Streets of Rage. Yeah. And so, he is definitely very talented.
Excellent music. I don't think I knew until recently that he did the music for this game.
Mhm.
I knew him from Streets of Rage.
Mhm.
But yeah, Revenge of Shinobi's got some fantastic music and fantastic sound quality too, I guess is what I was going for there. And Chinatown, of course, is one of my favorites.
Yeah, factory music is really good too. I don't like
yeah.
the labyrinth, the sound, the music in the
yeah.
labyrinth. It's like very anxiety inducing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
That's the
it's
last
just-
level, right?
Yeah, that's that maze at the
Yeah.
end. And
I was trying to figure that out.
music
I was
just
like,
puts me on edge.
yeah, that's what I felt like when because I watched it.
I was playing it for 2
Yeah.
hours
Yeah.
to try to
I
make my
bet.
way through it.
And I was
Yeah.
like, this song is now annoying, you know?
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
it's, especially like because that part was kind of difficult, right? And so it just seemed to grind my ears more.
Yes.
Should we talk about level 8 then?
Sure.
The labyrinth. You mentioned the labyrinth. It's the end of the game, right? And it is a labyrinth.
Yeah.
Mr. Mullet,
Yeah.
what did you think of this labyrinth? How did you make your way through it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was a lot of guessing and checking, especially during practice. You know, save stating and seeing which direction to go, and then finally I memorized a path. I don't know if it was the best path, but I memorized something and I was able to get it through. So then when I was streaming it and I got to that level, I was able to get through it fairly smooth rate versus just mumbling my way through. But that's kind of what I did, feeling around, seeing what I'm doing.
All right. So you just memorized it. You just played it enough and finally figured out a path
Right.
through.
Yeah.
You didn't map. You didn't write anything down at all.
Nothing.
Okay. Okay. What about you, COE? How did you get through? Did you get through the labyrinth?
I did,
Yeah.
but it had been long enough where I had forgotten how to get through. And I did look up a little walkthrough on that level to help me get through that because it is a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I got lost for a long time. I'm going to say 2 things that I did. I wrote down, and I'll tell you how I was. Maybe I should start with the other thing. The thing I noted, and maybe this is obvious to everyone, but I'll mention it. Each of the areas in the maze or in the labyrinth by the doors has the Japanese number. So I knew that each of one of these little areas was a number, and I would write down, okay, well, this, and the door is going to take me to number 4, and this one's going to take me to 7. There are 8 total. There's 8 different sections. I found a path that doesn't take you through all of them. You can go, and I forget the number. It's like 1, 4, 8. It doesn't matter. You can go through them, but there are some side areas that you don't have to go to that will give you bonuses. Did you guys find the power-up room in the labyrinth? The bonus room?
No.
I did not. I when I was playing it for the second time, and when I was streaming it, Dean was on. He was telling me about it, but because I just kept, I was just struggling at the end boss. But when I had to use my last continue, he told me about it, but I did not find it. I checked around a little bit until I lost a life, and I was like, I can't risk any more lives lost. I need to beat this game. So I didn't find it, but I heard about it.
I know at the end that there's a little room that has the secret power up for the shurikens. I think that's you have to get that, don't you, to get the good ending, I believe. If you don't get that power up for your shuriken, I think it's impossible to get the good ending. I could be wrong though.
The one I'm thinking of is in the labyrinth. It's the labyrinth has sort of like green walls or rock wall backgrounds, and in the section that's number 4, if I'm remembering it correctly, there is a gap in the wall, and it just looks like it's black in it. And normally you would look at this and say, well, this is an area that I can't get to, except there's a gap in the wall, and if you duck down and you walk through it, you will fall into a room that's all black, and it's got 8 crates in it full of power-ups, extra shuriken. There might be an extra life or something in there, a whole bunch of good stuff. And then you have to double jump your way back out of it and then make your way. When I did it, it was off to the side. So there was this one area on the path that I was taking where I went into area 4, and you walk in a door, and then you immediately go to the right, and there's another door, and you go through there. If you go to the left and go down and around, you'll find this little secret room with these 8 crates in it. Now, is that the one that you're thinking of, COE?
That is not, and I love that I'm learning new stuff about one of my favorite games today.
Okay.
Because no, this is a different room that you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a couple of, I will claim there are a couple of optional areas in that labyrinth that that you can get a little bit extra shuriken, a little extra power ups, and I use that again in the game. That counts for me.
Yes.
So let's finish up talking about maybe some of the other levels. I wanted to ask you guys, Mr. Mullet, we didn't cover every level, but did you have a favorite or a least favorite level or boss that you want to talk about before we talk about the end boss?
Yeah, so I would say starting off with my least favorite boss would be I guess you would call Arnold, then to the Terminator. That was my
okay.
Yeah, in the junkyard factory, I believe, area.
Yeah.
Or that was a tough one, just because the hitting him was just so tiny. The hit detection was just so tiny with his head. That was just so annoying. You had to do like a little half bunny jump that was very consistent. For me, I don't know if it was the controller that I was doing or if it was just me, but again, with muscle memory, I was able to get it, and it seemed to flow really well after that. As far as my favorite level, I would have to say it would be the waterfall. I just think that for the time, it was just a beautiful looking level. I love the platforming. I know there's some cheap parts with that, but it was still a really good level overall. So that's what I would have to say.
Excellent. And the graphics, the waterfall graphics, I thought were really gorgeous, especially for the time. The rolling water in the background.
Yep.
Okay. COE, what about you? Do you have any?
Sure. Well, speaking of the waterfall graphics, also the water in the seaport level, the waves down below, are really well done. It's some of the nicest looking, like 16-bit water, I think, in the game, in my opinion. But that's one of my least favorite levels, unfortunately. So the seaport, I dislike that level immensely. I find it to be very difficult. And let's see.
Because that's where you'd get a lot of kickback.
Lots of kickbacks.
Then you'd be done.
You die constantly because of that crazy jump about halfway through that level, or maybe it's a little more than halfway through. So that's a real challenge. I think my favorite level, though, is probably like just right off the bat, the first level, just because it's something about the sound and the look of it. It's just pure nostalgia for me. So I fire that up. I know I'm playing Revenge of Shinobi. I know I'm going to have a good time. So I love that level. So iconic. As far as bosses, my favorites are like probably Godzilla. Just because I thought that was so cool at the time playing this game, and all of a sudden like Godzilla shows up. And you're not expecting that. You're playing Revenge of Shinobi, and here's Godzilla. And then my least favorite is probably Mother Brain. That's the kind of robot that pops out the little brain that comes up. And mostly because it's a little tedious. I have a little trick I do where I go into the far right corner, and I kind of just try to dodge the lasers. And whenever the brain pops up, I'll throw a shuriken at it. Yeah. And it works. It's fairly simple, but it takes a long time if you're not powered up.
That's what I do too.
Yeah. I think I saw
it's
you.
the safest and most reliable, right?
Yeah.
But it just takes a long time.
It does.
I found Joe pacing a lot with that one. For me, I was just going back and forth, and then when it popped up, I would throw a star at it or a shuriken.
Yep.
Rather. So, yeah, just a lot. It's very tedious back and forth. Towards the end, I would have to self-detonate to speed it up a little bit.
What about you, Eric? Do you have a...
Yeah, I wanted to say, so one of the ones that's the most nostalgic for me, strangely, is one that I struggled to get to in the early days, but I remember from the GamePro ads, and that's the, I think you guys actually said you try to get through it quickly, and that's the, I think it's like the first airport level. And it has machine gunners, it has a fence that you have to hop on each side of, it has flamethrower guys. I really like the look of that level, and I like the dynamic of going back and forth on two sides of a fence. Some guys can hit you if you're on the right side, they'll hit you. If you're not, they won't. I just love the look of it, and the music is okay too. But I remember seeing that, and the ones with the water, the waves, and seeing those two in the screenshots and saying, "Wow, this is an absolutely gorgeous game." And so I like that level, just I guess for the aesthetics of it. In terms of bosses, I'm going to mention this one so we can set it up for when we talk about the versions later. There is, you mentioned the Terminator bosses. I'm going to mention Spider-Man and Batman bosses. Those are ones that got a lot of revision history, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to mention it now. And COE, you had mentioned Godzilla. What are my least favorite bosses? I mentioned the first stage boss. He was trickier than I think he should have been.
Yeah.
The second stage boss, do you guys remember? That was this ninja flying around, I think, while you're in like a disco.
Yeah.
He's a little bit tricky, but apparently you can get him stuck in a corner, and then you just whack him with the shuriken, and his almost invisible form can be dispatched pretty easily. But
so then so then what about, if we're talking about bosses, should we maybe talk about the end boss?
let's talk about the end.
Yeah,
let's talk about
boy.
the end.
So let's talk about the ending, right? There's two endings.
There are, yeah. So do you guys know about this? There's two endings.
There's two endings, right?
COE, why don't you tell us, since you've had a lot of experience, tell us about the two endings. What's
Sure.
the deal?
So at the end, when you battle Zed, he has your wife captured, and he has a contraption that drops basically a weight on her. A ceiling starts to lower, and it's going to crush her to death unless you stop the mechanism from crushing her while you battle Zed. So you have to do both, and it's a real challenge. I mean, it's not an easy experience.
No.
And you really do want to save your wife, because the bad ending is kind of a letdown. You get all the way through that game, which is a super challenge, and then you get this 3-second ending that's like, okay, she's dead, and it's pretty. It's definitely a letdown. But there's a hole in the wall when you're battling Zed, and if you hit Zed and then jump and throw shuriken into the hole in the wall, the mechanism that's about to crush your wife is stopped temporarily. And that's your kind of opportunity to go and continue fighting Zed. And you just kind of rinse and repeat that. Mm-hmm. And if you stop her from being crushed, you get the good ending where you and your wife are reunited, the sunset comes down, you get the nice music interlude, and you get the good ending.
And you live happily ever after.
Exactly.
Until the third game. No, I don't know. Mr. Mullet, how did you discover the two endings?
So first off, it was the last boss. It's like you're battling someone from a 80s hair metal band. But I had in practice, I had beaten it, but I had no idea with the thing coming down, and in practice when I beat it, it was, you saw the outline. So I had no idea that there were slats in there, but I was watching a speed run. So every time I beat a game, I watched the speed run afterwards. So I was watching the speed run, and all of a sudden I saw they were stopping this mechanism. It's like I didn't even know that was back there. So when I went to stream it and I got to that part, I started to do that, and it's just a lot of parts in this game were just unknown. It's just kind of feeling your way through with it, and that's kind of how I was able to beat it at the true ending, I would say.
So you did go back and do it with the save now code.
Yes, yeah. But the first time I beat it was just with save states. So like I say, I like to go back and stream it all the way through in one sitting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I had the ending ruined for me in 1989 or 1990 because I would read GamePro, and I always read the tips, because I'm looking for cheats and all. When I was a kid, that was great. Oh, there's a little cheat code you can enter, or somebody had written in and said, how can I beat this guy with and save the girl? And they had said you can throw the shuriken into the mechanism, and so I had remembered that for 7 years or whatever until I got it, and then of course I'd remembered it since then. But I had that ruined for me pretty early on. But yeah, two endings.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys find the end boss? Was he a challenge?
Yes, I did find it a challenge, and it's actually, when I went back and I like to set up my games like it's like an athletic event. So I'll practice and then I'll stream it. But the last stream that I did, it took me 2 streams to beat the game. The first time I made it to the Spider-Man Batman boss, and I was just destroyed. First time I streamed it, and I was running out of time, so I went back, played it again. A few days later, I got to the last boss. I was on my very last continue in my very last life, so I had probably died at the final boss. Probably, I don't know, a handful of times. I didn't count, but a ton of times. And I was just like, I don't know if I'll have to, because I was running a time to get to work and everything like that. So I had to speed it up. But it was very difficult, and I finally got it. I couldn't believe I got it. And at the very end, it's just like, I had never experienced such a great feeling from beating the game after I defeated that boss, sitting through all the way through, from start to finish. It was just such a great feeling. It's probably one of the most satisfying beats I've had in probably a long time. So very hard last boss, I would say, even on easy, which when I played it. But I guess I don't think really the difficulty has much in the way of changing the boss structure. It's just the lives.
Mm-hmm.
How about?
Okay, and COE, what do you think? What do you think about the boss? How?
Well, I think he's really challenging. Now, that's if you have the Shuriken power up, it makes it so much easier, because he takes, I think without that Shuriken power ups, it must take like 20 plus hits or something to take him out. If you have the Shuriken power up and you can avoid him throwing that hat at you, or the hair, or whatever it is, when he throws the projectile,
right,
then you can take him out in, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hits. It's not that much. But the problem is, like, he has 3 different throws. One of them comes like straight out that you can usually jump right over. One of them kind of comes at an angle that you can usually duck. But then there's one, the third throw, that's really hard to avoid. And you have to do a very specific kind of double jump and like up and then back to avoid it. And it's super challenging. If you can do that and keep up your power up, it's fairly straightforward. But getting all that done and all that to line up in a row is a super challenge.
And stopping the mechanism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I used the self-destruct magic. I would make sure that I would be there with maybe 4 or 5 extra lives. Yeah. And the self-destruct magic did a couple of things for me. You got to be careful, because the animations for the magic, that wall, that stone will still fall. So you have to stop it, and then you have to do the animation at just the right time where he's attacking so that it'll damage him. But it basically gave me like 4 or 5 life bars where I could keep taking damage. It would damage him, and then when I got down to like my last life, I'd use the lightning magic to protect myself, and then just go at him. But that's one place where my strategy actually officially involved killing yourself, the suicide magic to help me weaken the enemy and go on from there. But yeah, it was definitely challenging. And I should we say, I mean, so Mr. Mullet, you beat the game, you beat it, and you got the good ending, right?
Yeah, on stream. But I did the bad ending in practice. Yeah.
Okay. And COE, have you beat it and gotten the good ending?
Yes.
And I did too. That was my. I think we all. You said you didn't play very much of it, but I'm like you, Mr. Mullet. I was so like, it was elated. Like the next 48 hours, I have finally beaten this game in a way that I consider to be legitimate after 30 years. I did it. Yeah. My old man hands and reflexes. I was able to beat this game. I couldn't beat as a younger man, so I was really pleased to beat it. So it's definitely a challenge.
It definitely is, and I think a lot of these older games, and I like to think about this a lot, especially when we're looking at difficulty. I got into gaming, around when the 64 came out, so I would think the games around then started to get a little bit easier because they were longer. This game is obviously shorter, but you can't make a game where someone is going to buy it in 1989 probably for a lot of money. Yeah, and to get through it in 2 hours, But yeah, there's probably 2 hours, 2.5 hours of gameplay from start to finish. But I think with the practice, there's 15, 20 plus hours, and definitely if you need to practice to get through this game, it's worth your money.
Yeah.
At the time. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you can see how games have evolved in difficulty from the late 80s, early 90s until now.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely a callback to the old style. And I got to tell you, if it hadn't been for save states, it would have taken me 2 or 3 times longer.
Yep.
Just because you have to keep going back through the old level. So I did what you did. I practiced certain sections. I used the save states. I practiced. And then when I got comfortable, I played it on the Xbox. When I got comfortable with it and thought I can go through this, I went back to my original Genesis. I pulled my cartridge off. I played with the original controller, and I got through and I was able to get through the game and count it as a win. So it was really gratifying.
Yeah, and you almost have to, because there's just not enough time to go through put so
not
much
anymore.
No. And I mean, it's and you have that sense of progress too. If you're able to get a section down and memorize something and then play it all the way through, and it is very satisfying. That's what I like to do with games, is to practice them, especially these older games, and then stream it and go through it and actually look like I'm good at it.
COE, did you ever beat it back in the day?
I did. Yeah.
So even without all these modern conveniences, you were able to get through the game. Right?
This was like a go-to game for me. So this was one of those games that, I mean, Mr. Mullet was saying, how much gameplay you get out of it back in the day. And I don't know how many hours I probably played this, but it was a lot. It was a real hard game and a real challenge. But it was just memorizing.
Did you ever pause it?
Did you ever pause it overnight?
I would wake up in the morning, play like Revenge of Shinobi or whatever game I'm playing at the moment, pause it, go to school, come home and hope that like the TV hadn't been messed with, or it's still like playable, didn't freeze up or something, and continue to play it after school.
Awesome. I love that.
Cool.
I love that.
Cool.
All right.
Okay, so we've talked about how we all kind of played different versions. There's several versions.
Yeah.
It's been released several times, but there's also there's also a particular reason why there was re-releases due to copyrights.
Yeah.
Right. So the original has we talked about Spider-Man, Batman, Godzilla, the Terminator, right, and Rambo. That's something. So that was in version 1, but But the problem is too, like if you're just buying it off the shelf, you don't know what version you get, right? Like if you didn't get it original. So when you got it, COE, did you get the original with all the copyrighted enemies?
When I got this as a kid, it was with all the copyright, and that's one of the things that made me fall in love with this game, because as an 80s kid, I was in love with Rambo, Terminator, Godzilla, Spider-Man, all these things that they threw in this game, all these copyrights. Where I was thinking, wow, I've never seen this in a game before. Look at it, we're battling Terminator, Rambo, Bruce Lee, all this stuff.
Oh, Bruce.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that really drew it to me. And the game that I had back in the day was Revision 1 of the game.
Okay. And do you still have that copy? Or
when I bought this copy right here, sorry for people at home that can't see this, but I'm holding up my physical copy for the Genesis. I thought I was buying Revision 1. Unfortunately, it's not. It's the second revision of the game.
Okay.
What changed in the second revision? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's so Spider-Man is still Spider-Man, but Batman is now Devilman. And then there's a splash page that they added before the little intro, so where it says like copyright information.
Yeah. So they affirmed that this was Spider-Man, right? That they had the copyright for it because Sega had the copyright. But they had to do away with Batman. He became Devilman, right? He was more like a hairy bat devil creature. At some point too, I think in one of the early revisions, they changed Rambo to a bald-headed machine gun carrier.
Right.
Tell us, there's some other revisions. I'm curious. So, Mr. Mullet, when we talk about Spider-Man or Batman or Godzilla, what was your version like? Did you ever see Spider-Man in your version?
Yeah, I had a pink Spider-Man.
Pink
Spider-Man, and then the Godzilla one It didn't actually look like Godzilla. It was like a inside-out dinosaur.
Mhm.
Like a skeleton dinosaur, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh,
So
So, and then what about like when you finally got this game? You said you got it in the 6-pack.
I got the 6-pack version. Yeah. What does it say? I can't remember which version. So the 6-pack version is actually in between the two that you're talking about. It uses a skeleton dinosaur, but I think it still has Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And from my notes here, the pink Spider-Man didn't come out until version 1.04, which is the Wii Virtual Console version.
Mm-hmm.
That was like from 2009 or something, that Sega had lost the rights to Spider-Man in the intervening 15 years or whatever, 20 years. And so they changed it to a pink guy in tights, or a guy in pink tights. But the 6-pack, so there's a couple of different versions out there. Now, I'm going to say something that maybe you guys will challenge, and I can prove it if I need to, but we went to Midwest Gaming Classic, and I knew about the different versions. And I have a cartridge that looks just like yours, COE, and it's version 1 or version 0. It has Rambo. It doesn't have the splash screen, the extra splash screen. The credits are still Yuzo Koshiro on the main screen, and it has all the original characters. So I think it's the version that you played, that you had as when you first got it. And all of my research says, well, that wasn't ever released. That was only released in Japan. But now you've confirmed it and I've confirmed it. And I got really lucky. I am so thrilled because I asked the guys, because I knew you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell by looking at it which version it was. So I'm like, I'm going to have to buy this game like 6 times until I can get the version 1, the original version. But I got lucky. But there is an interesting thing about that, which is not true in any of the other ones. There was a bug, I think, in that very first version where the Spider-Man net webs won't stick to you. You get hit by them and they just disappear. And so I had been practicing on the Xbox or some other versions, and the webs kept sticking to me, right?
Yeah.
You're like trying to shake them off, and you're like, wow, this is really annoying. And then I played on my Genesis cart, looks just like yours, COE, and the webs just hit me and boom, bounced off. And I'm like, oh,
wow, you lucked out.
This is easy.
It's almost easier.
It's almost easier because there's a bug. But yeah, over the course of maybe the 20 years they've released these, there's on record, what do we have? 5 different versions where they changed Rambo to a bald-headed guy, and they changed the title screen to Spider-Man, and Batman becomes Devilman, and Godzilla becomes a skeleton dinosaur, and then they changed Spider-Man to a pink character, and apparently, and you maybe COE would know this because you're so familiar with the original title screen, apparently in this pink Spider-Man version, they also changed the face of the ninja on the title screen.
Yeah, it was a famous actor was on there initially, and I'm blanking on the guy's name at the moment. Shibi, I forget. But
I don't know it either.
Yeah, it's an actor's face, and they changed it for the revision.
They changed the face a little on the title screen. So the current versions, the one that's on the Switch, and I think it was originally released on the Wii Virtual Console, all of these copyrighted things are gone now.
Yeah.
All gone. No faces, no Spider-Man, no Batman, no Godzilla, no Rambo.
It makes me want to track down a copy like I had growing up. All that much more.
And beware, they're hard. They're hard. You can't, from what I can tell, you can't tell by looking at it. You have to play the game.
Yeah. When I bought this one, I didn't realize that I thought if it was the black box, the original 1989 release, that it was revision 1.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until after I bought it that no, there's, even with the black box, there's multiple versions.
Yeah, so be aware of that. Any collectors out there, that there's maybe 2 that look the same from the outside.
Yeah.
Any other comments about the revisions, the different revisions? This game is famous for its revisions, I think.
Yeah. I feel like we covered them all. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Mullet, you want to give us your final thoughts, overall thoughts on the game?
Yeah, when I go through games, I like to put them in spreadsheets, and I'm sure we all do that to a certain degree. But I graded this one. I put a difficulty down.
He doesn't know you.
Sorry, go ahead. I do the same thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I gave this one and I was actually really surprised how good this game was. I gave it a B, solid B. I think the music was great. Like I mentioned before, the spray animation. There are some cheap parts here and there, but I think that's ubiquitous for older games like this. You have to have some cheap, but for the most part, it wasn't terrible. I think it had some great platforming, and it flowed really well. I was a little confused on the boss choices, and I think they were in. I put interesting facts down about games, but I had put that down that I read somewhere that they wanted to get these different types of famous, like Spider-Man and Batman, just so they would sell more of the game, because kids would say, oh, they have Godzilla in here, you could fight Godzilla or something like that. I was a little confused about that, but overall I think it was a really solid game. I had my experience with beating it. I felt really good, really satisfying. That's what it comes down to. If you feel really good about beating a game, you have those endorphins flowing through. It's like, oh man, this is great. Overall, for difficulty, it wasn't the hardest game I've played. Out of a 10, I think I gave it a 7 out of 10 in difficulty. So definitely hard, definitely challenging. I think with the luxuries that we mentioned of save stating, rewinding, definitely with time and how long it might take to actually beat this game, and to decrease frustrations or destroying any controllers or objects in your house. I think that's a good touch for it, especially with the times we live in now, and take advantage of that, practice it. I think it's fun to, it's good to practice it and then go through and play it, and you get the most out of it. But overall, I think it's a really good game, solid title in my opinion.
Okay. And COE, what do you think?
Oh, well, this is S tier Genesis in my book, but I'm looking at this through rose-colored glasses. This is like, when it comes to nostalgia, there's certain games that I'm not really the best person to be, judging them, because I've been playing them for so long. I have so much love for them. So this is 10s across the board, from the music to the level design, just the way it plays, the overall gameplay. I love everything about it, and it's on my top 10 list of Sega Genesis games.
Nice. Eric, what do you think?
Oh, I was going to ask you what you thought of it.
Well,
Why don't you tell us what you think of the amount you've played? Is that too much?
No, I'm not the problem is I'm not a big platformer. I have trouble with platformers. And so this being old school platforming, it's very difficult for me.
Well, it's a tough game. These guys are all saying
it was tough. So it wasn't really calling my name, I would say, but so I think it was more frustrating than fun for me.
Yeah, I think there's a curve or something to this game where you're going to go into it, and I think it ramped up a little bit too early in the difficulty with level 2, and you got to level 2, and I think probably a lot of people, if they're not ready for a challenge like this, that's likely where they're going to maybe just say, okay, this is too much for me. I mean, I remember giving up at level 2 for a while, when I was first playing it. But if you can get past that part, and you can get into the double jumping, and that's why I think level 2 is the way it is, because they're like, you have to have this skill. You have to have this skill going forward. We're going to just make you learn it early. But if you can get over that hump, I think it's a pretty good game. I have some nostalgia for it, like COE, because I remember reading about it in magazines. But I've also played, and we're going to talk about this briefly, I've also played Shinobi 3. To me, was also sort of a contemporary when I finally played them. And there's some real improvements in Shinobi 3 that are missing in this game. So I don't have quite, I'm between Mr. Mullet and COE. I think it's a really good game. I think it's got some flaws in terms of the difficulty. I think the double jump is unnecessarily precise. I think they could have opened that one up a little bit. But I really enjoyed the game. At the end of it, I'm really glad that I was able to practice it and beat it. It's certainly a challenge, but there's nothing from a graphical or sound perspective that I can really fault. They maybe made some things obnoxious. I'll say this, the game seems to know where you want to jump, and they put enemy right there. Like you'd be jump. It's like, okay, here's a blind jump, and by the way, this guy's gonna fire a bullet right as you're coming down. So that kind of stuff is like, okay, give me a break. I mean, if you have to have it memorized, if you can't sort of negotiate your way through it, I like to see that if you're going to play it for the very first time, that you have a chance. And if you have to know that this bullet is going to come flying at you in this blind jump, okay, maybe. So I give it I'm definitely really pleased with the game, but I did find some flaws. But if you can get through that hump, I think it's definitely really worth a playthrough and worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. Okay, so this is the second game in the Shinobi franchise, I guess you'd say, right?
I would say
that. There is original Shinobi, Shinobi 3, like you talked about, and then Shadow Dancer. And we asked, the Cartridge Club asked what your favorite Shinobi game is. And Shinobi 3 came out ahead at 40%, and all the others were tied at 20%.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you, Eric, I'll start with you. Like, what have you played original Shinobi? Have you played Shinobi 3? And have you played Shadow Dancer?
Absolutely.
And have you beat those as well?
Yeah. So I want to mention the four games that we're talking about. Shinobi 3 or the original Shinobi. We're talking about the arcade.
Yeah.
The original arcade from Sega, about 1987 or something like that. There were ports of it to different systems. I grew up playing it on the Master System. I have played the arcade version. Revenge of Shinobi, obviously that's the game we're talking about. That was originally released for the Genesis. Shinobi 3, another Genesis game. And then there's Shadow Dancer, which is a Genesis game and an arcade game, but they're two different games. We didn't clarify in the poll here, but I was thinking of the Genesis game. And I have played all of them, and I have beat all of them except for Shinobi 3.
Oh.
And so that might be the next game. You mentioned the poll results already. My vote, I voted in the poll too. I voted Shinobi 3 only because I think it adds some features to the game. There's a sprint, there's a jumping attack, and maybe that's it. I think there's another move. There's wall jumping that make the available mechanics in the game. It just expands what you can do in the game. So from a technical perspective, and the music is pretty good. Maybe not as good as Revenge of Shinobi. The graphics are gorgeous, but with those control or those mechanic improvements, I had to rate Shinobi 3 as my favorite too, just because it just does so many things right in terms of the mechanics. So let's, Mr. Mullet, maybe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so right after I played Shinobi 3, and, for the most part, it did out-edge Revenge of Shinobi just by a little bit, but for some reason I felt more connected with Revenge of Shinobi just because I felt like I struggled more to get that win, get that beat.
Oh, sure.
Shinobi 3, obviously, they've made a lot of great improvements to it. I did like Revenge of Shinobi's music better.
Yeah.
Shinobi 3. Still good graphics. Easier. I played Shinobi 3 on normal, and it didn't really have too much of an issue with it. I think maybe I put 10 hours into the game with practice, and then a 2.5 hour, legitimate playthrough of it. But it's just like I just didn't feel that connection. But it did, with all the things considering, it did outbeat Shinobi 2 just by a little bit. And I haven't played the other ones.
Okay.
COE, what do you say?
Well, I have not played the original Shinobi, which I need to rectify that at some point, because I have a Master System, so that should be high on the list of games to pick up. Shinobi 3, I think objectively is probably a better game, but for me, my favorite's Revenge of Shinobi. And again, nostalgia. I mean, it's a powerful tool. A powerful force, I should say. Absolutely. And but I think graphically, Shinobi 3 is really pretty remarkable upgrade. It's something about the level design in Shinobi 3 and just the way it plays. And like you said, there's some additional some moves, controls that they added to the mix. So really good. It's not surprising that most people chose Shinobi 3 as their favorite.
Okay. Okay. I want to mention, we've talked about some of these other Shinobi games. I just wanted to mention where some people can play these because if you know Sega or you know Sega Genesis collections, you know there have been a lot of them, it would seem. In terms of the original Shinobi, you have a number of options. There's the arcade version, of course. There were home console ports to the NES, the Master System, which is what I grew up playing, the TurboGrafx. And there is the Sonic Genesis collection, which you're going to probably hear me mention a couple times. It is one of the greatest Sonic or Genesis collections available. That was for the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. It only has one omission. It is missing Revenge of Shinobi. That is its only flaw as far as I can tell. But it includes, I believe it includes, it includes as an unlockable the Shinobi arcade version. And I'm sure it includes Shinobi 3. I believe it also includes Shadow Dancer. It's only missing Revenge. That's the Sonic Genesis collection. For Revenge of Shinobi, the best places to play it are on the Genesis and the newest collection, the Sega Genesis Classics, which is available on Xbox, PS4, Xbox One, PS4, and Switch, as Mr. Mullet played, and Steam. And it does include Revenge of Shinobi. It's the version 1.04, I think, with the pink Spider-Man. Mr. Mullet confirmed that. Shinobi 3 is on almost all of the Genesis collections, and it's a Genesis cartridge, so you can play that. Shadow Dancer, I might be mistaken earlier saying where Shadow Dancer was. It's a Genesis game. There was an arcade version that's different. And it's on, actually, it's on the Sega Genesis collection in the PS2 era. So that might be the only place where you can find that one. I do want to mention some other Shinobi games for anybody interested. There are two for the Game Gear, which are often considered very good games. They're called Game Gear Shinobi 1 and Game Gear Shinobi 2. Those are completely unique games available on the Game Gear. And then the end of the Shinobi series apparently was on the PS2, where they rebooted it as a 3D platformer called Shinobi. And there's actually a sequel to it, which is another character, female character, and that game is called Nightshade on your PS2. So if you can't get enough Shinobi, there's a bunch of different games that you can play. But I would certainly recommend anybody go back and play the arcade version on the Sonic collection or the Master System version, because I am biased towards that, and Shinobi 3 on the Genesis and most Sega Genesis collections. Two excellent games.
Okay. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of the Cartridge Club Game of the Month podcast. The Game of the Month for February is Portal 2 for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Steam. I think it was also just on sale recently. I don't know. Hopefully it might
Cartridge
still
Club
be.
Effect. It's probably on sale. Go check out.
80% off, and it was pretty ironic because I played Portal 1 and Portal 2. Well, I just bought them, and they were 80% off both of them, and I got them for both games for under $5.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
That is a lot of gaming value.
So check that out. And then in March, Curtis is going to be bringing back March Madness with a great selection of every portable Castlevania game. So
and there's good ones on there.
Yeah, there's some good ones. So get in on that as
Game
well.
Boy, Nintendo DS, right? Well, every portable.
Sure. And then finally, we have the honor of announcing April's Game of the Month, which is going to be The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess.
Ooh.
I might play that one.
We have been playing, the Cartridge Club has been playing Legend of Zelda games every April for the last 2 years. We started with Ocarina.
And then we did
last year was Wind Waker.
One of my favorites.
We're going to go with Twilight Princess. So really excited about that one. I have been playing them the last 2 years. It's been a great opportunity to get through the Zelda games for me, which I've never played through. And I'm going to be playing Twilight Princess too.
I'm hoping to play Twilight Princess as well.
It's a good one.
So, okay. Again, if you'd like to get involved with the club, I'd encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Cartridge Club NA. You can also visit our Discord for all kinds of discussion about past, present, and future games of the month. There's also the Cartridge Club forums at cartridgeclub.org and the Facebook community and group pages. And to those of you who are interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from members of our community. We are extremely grateful to those supporters, and if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look into how you can do that at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. And I just want to thank our wonderful guests. Thank you for being on. It was great to have you. COE, where can we find you in the world?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun. I definitely appreciate it. And you can find me on Twitch, where I stream retro games on all original hardware at COE33. And then I have the YouTube channel, The Game Hunters, where my sister Leaf and I go around our home state of Oregon looking for bargains on video games.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
Definitely check them out. It's a great channel.
Okay.
And Mr. Mullet, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. I stream pretty much every day, about an hour or two. Mr. Mullet Gaming, and no set schedule, but if you want to, swing on by. Enjoy talking to people. And for the most part, I stream retro, but there's some other stuff here and there that I play as well.
Okay, great.
Great.
And I've seen you both in the Discord, so it's great to talk to you guys through that as well.
Yeah.
All right, babe, why don't you tell us
about us?
About us.
Okay, well, I'm Eric, and my wife Melissa. We are collectively known as the QDawgs. You can find Melissa on Twitter at Mrs. QDawg, and you can find me on Twitter at Mighty QDawg, and that's DAWG. Because that's how I spelled it when I created my first Xbox Live account, and I'm stuck with it ever since. We also have a YouTube channel called Mighty QDawg, where we talk about our collecting, our video game collecting, and we have a weekly vlog where we talk about the stuff we do each week, which is a 5-minute vlog. It's a lot of fun to do and interact with the community.
Yep, it's just in the QDawg house.
And you can find us on the Cartridge Club Discord.
Yes. All right. Then to everyone listening, we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you for joining us.
CC Unite.